I mean, he can't withstand your questions. Hey, stay there. Stay right there because we have a lot more. We're also joined now by former FBI Special Agent Bobby Chacon and former Whitewater Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg. And here in the studio with me in D.C., Democratic strategist and Washington attorney Scott Bolden. Scott, I want to go to you. You have experience both on the defense and the prosecution side. Memos to the file. I mean, if you're not a practicing attorney, people think, oh, that's kind of nice. You read it. It's like a Dear Diary, memo to the file. But talk about in your own practice when you looked at memos to the file. I mean, honestly, let's take politics out of it for a moment.
I've been lined up to this point, right?
Yeah. Politics out of it for the moment. People who write memos to the file, go.
It's fundamental to litigation, whether you're in the government or otherwise, white collar or government. It's to me, though, my memos to the file and associates memos to the file are factual. They're facts that you want to make memorable. And I don't know whether they're self-serving, but I will tell you this. We highlight points that are takeaways from those meetings. The FBI, these were pretty standard notes, if you will. Now, you can read into whatever you want to read into them, but in the end, it's all about the facts. And if you want to put a nefarious overlay to it, then that's not going to be very helpful, maybe politically, but as a practical matter, it's not very helpful.
Well, nefarious only, I think, to the extent that he decided rather than just answering the committee's questions, he would get his point of view out by going through a Columbia professor friend who would then siphon the information out to journalists. That calls into question his motives.
No, it doesn't. He did that in response to Donald Trump's attack on him.
Right. What was he worried about? What was he worried about there,
I don't think he was worried about it.
He was worried
about his reputation.
Thank you.
He was actually worried about his standing and worried about Donald Trump's lies about him.
Is that what the FBI...
What about that, though,
Is that what the FBI director is supposed to be doing? The regulations applicable to this case and the law... Section 641, he should have fired him day one. Section 641 of the code demonstrates clearly you cannot traffic documents, you cannot reveal documents, you cannot sell documents or trade them. He was trading these documents off for his own reputation, was he not?
He was trying to protect his reputation.
On government computers.
In the United States of America. And sure, he leaked those. Those were his personal notes. Yeah. He didn't break the law in doing it. Otherwise, he'd be prosecuted, much like they did a hatchet job
FBI?
on Mr. McCabe.
All right, let's go to Saul. Saul, the underlying crime here, now that we see these memos, we see what he wrote in the sedan on the way off from the White House and so forth. Where's the underlying crime?
So,
who's underlying
agree
crime?
With me.
The president, the president,
or Comey's? Yeah, both. Good question, Saul. Take it away.
Well, no, there's no underlying crime for the president reflected in these notes at all. Certainly nothing approaching obstruction of justice. As is so often the case with President Trump, there's not an understanding of norms that have evolved and how you deal with the FBI and how you interact with somebody like the FBI director. But there's nothing close to an obstruction of justice. I share the concern of the congressman. I don't think I would put it in the stark terms he did. If Director Comey knew at the time of this initial meeting where he was alone with the president and briefed him on the salacious Russia allegations, if he knew by that point in time, which I believe he did, who paid for these, that it was the DNC and Mrs. Clinton's campaign, I think it is extremely disappointing that he didn't reveal that to the president. I think he definitely should have done so.
Well, that's a material fact. That's a material fact that goes to the motivations, perhaps even the credibility of the underlying allegations in the dossier. Let's go to Bobby. Bobby, on Jake Tapper's show, we had Comey. He was referencing whether he thought the information, I guess, that he transmitted to his pal was classified or not. Let's watch.
Senator Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, says that there are 7 memos. He says 4 of them are classified. Is that right?
I don't know, because I don't have the memos. I don't know exactly how many there are. I know when I created some of them, they were classified, but I don't know how many of that group.
Okay, Bobby, I got to have you take this away. He wrote the memos.
I can't understand.
He wrote the memos.
And how many times his answer is, I don't know. How could he not have them? He had copies. He provided copies to his friend at Columbia. He probably has those memos in his briefcase when he travels around. How could he not have these memos? How many times can we accept the answer that I don't know or I don't remember when he's cornered on one of these questions? It's unfathomable that he doesn't know what's in those memos, that 4 of them were classified. He's got copies of them. He probably has copies of them right there with him.
I'd say ignorance of the law.
One thing, Laura, one thing that strikes me is that, you know, the FBI director on January 6th, 2 full weeks before the inauguration, he's going immediately and creating these memos, which he already told us that he never had to do under President Obama. And it really sets up this, his mindset was that President Trump was an adversary right from the beginning. Before they even had a relationship, he's treating the President of the United States as his adversary. And it's clear from his creating these memos.
And Bobby, he said the first meeting when he went into Trump Tower, he felt a lot of trepidation going into that meeting. He was afraid. Well, why is he afraid?
Was he queasy? Did he get queasy? Was he mildly nauseous?
Nauseated, queasy. I think it's nauseated, not nauseous. Otherwise, he would be creating nausea in others. But I'm a grammatical nut. Let's ask you one question. I'm going to go to Scott. What would happen to a regular rank-and-file FBI agent if he sort of, in the answer to a committee, a congressman said, "Well, I wrote them. I don't know if they're classified. Some of them are classified. I don't know." What would happen to that agent?
His career would effectively be over if he wasn't booted out of the FBI. His career as an investigator would be over because, you know, when you show a lack of credibility, you can't be a witness anymore. And our bread and butter in the FBI is to be a witness. I've seen agents suspended for significant amounts of time without pay. Not for leaking, but for taking information from, say, our FBI agents on the ground in Iraq and trying to transmit it to our law enforcement counterparts here because maybe it's a new way of creating an IED that they're finding over there. And then we want to transmit that to our bomb tech partners on the LAPD or LA Sheriff. And when that information is passed without being declassified, they want to fire you or they want to criminally charge you.
Even though the intent was not there to compromise security, Scott.
Well, here's the deal. Look at the first note. You have it right there. The first note says that Mr. Comey writes himself, he doesn't know how to classify these. These are his notes. He says, I'll tell you what, the default is secret. Right there. It's right there. Now, what is so wrong with that?
Oh,
and by the way, he said that in the very beginning.
He didn't say that to Jake Tapper. He just said he didn't know what was classified.
We're years later. I'm talking about
Chicago Law School. He doesn't remember what's classified or not?
He didn't know how to classify them when he sent them to McCabe and others. What is so wrong with that?
But it doesn't matter if it's classified or not. You cannot send government material to a third party under FBI regulations.
Was not government material at that time.
Wait a second, Scott. He's creating a memo to the FBI file on his meeting. Not later. He went into the sedan after he went into the White House. He said at one point it was 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes.
Okay.
On a government computer. I will argue that case in court against you every day of the week. That's a government document.
Argue against you too,
so you think was it on perfume stationery?
To release those. It was done in response to the bad conduct of Donald Trump, and he wanted.
No, it was done on government time. It was done on government time.
Of course, it was done on government
property.
That's not the standard. That's not the standard.
Saul.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your response to that? I mean, if you're in the independent counsel's office and you were deputy independent counsel, you're writing a memo to the file on a government computer after meeting with a government official, you send that over to a buddy at a law school and say, well, do what you want with it, get it to a journalist. Is that government property or not?
Well, first of all, two things. They're clearly not his personal notes. They're on, as you say, they're on a government computer. He's writing them to people who are professionals with him in the FBI. And whether it is classified or unclassified, it's government property, and he doesn't have the right to send them out anywhere without getting permission from the proper authority. And by the way, Deputy AG Rosenstein, when he was in front of Congress 2 or 3 months ago, made that point. He was specifically asked that question, and he came up with the same answer that you did and that I do. They just simply aren't his personal notes. It's just
Congressman Stewart, let's want to move off of that for a second. Congressman Stewart, in the last memo, the president's clear that if he's not a target, He wants people to know that. Yeah. He wants to be able to be the president of the United States without the anvil of the investigation on his back. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with him saying, hey, if I'm not a target, can you get that out? Like, he's not a political, expert at that point. He just got into office 5 minutes ago.
That's right.
So he's saying that. No, they're making that to be such a big deal. Oh, he's trying to manipulate the investigation. No, he's not. Comey already was basically indicating he wasn't a target.
Well, that's exactly right. And plus, I think he indicates these memos that if there's something that's taken place, he wants to know. And I got to go back to this other thing, because two other points I think are really important. First, don't leak, especially if you don't know if they're classified, like he admits he doesn't know.
That's a great point. I didn't think of that.
The second point is, look, I'm a former Air Force pilot. I dealt with classified information all the time. All we're asking is that Director Comey and Hillary Clinton be treated just like I would have been treated if I had been responsible for either leaking or disseminating information that was classified. And the last thing, and that is, Director Comey did not reveal to the president that this was paid for by the DNC, by Hillary Clinton, just like they did not reveal to the FISA court that it was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. That is a meaningful fact that should have been revealed.
Laura, these are disputed facts, though. The fact that the FBI director did not disclose something in his conversations with the president, remember, the president and his campaign since October of 2016 were under investigation, at least in connection to the number of contacts between those campaign members and Russian operatives. Brennan's testimony told you that before Congress under oath.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you know, or he knew, whether the president at that juncture was a target subject or just a witness.
Well,
that's fair analysis.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
He told him he wasn't.
Yeah,
he told him
he wasn't a target in the memos. I mean, you can read
it's right in the
memos.
memo, Scott.
But you're talking about the first meeting. At that juncture.
In January.
And it doesn't matter. And by the way, these issues of target and subject and witness, doing an investigation, those labels can go a lot of different places and then back.
Well,
those are changing labels.
One thing I think, just as people, and again, it's hard to take politics out of this because we're all living in Washington and this is very heated. If we were under a cloud of suspicion and the information that was being used to perhaps taint us or tar us was developed by a mortal enemy, political or otherwise, or business, I think all of us as human beings would just want to know that. I mean, would want to, like, okay, wait a second. Now it kind of makes sense why these inflammatory accusations are in there. As people, we would all want to know that. Now, whether that affects the legal case, I don't know. But I think the fact that he did not reveal that, being as smart as he is, he's a smart guy, to me is just very odd. He can remember the shrimp scampi and the appetizer. I don't remember what I ate yesterday.
Look at the first meeting. He and the president talk about the unreliability of that report. There was no need to go deeper than that. And be honest with you, Donald Trump talks a lot more in these memos than James Comey does. So there's nothing offensive or nefarious about it. Stick to the facts, because these memos are all about the facts.
So why did he want to leak
put them down.
If they're embarrassing facts, why did he want to leak that?
To protect his reputation and to protect the United States of America. Absolutely.
United States of America?
Of course.
Okay.
Because his job is to protect the citizens. He doesn't work for Donald Trump.
But so you're admitting he considers Donald Trump an adversary.
It's clear he let him go, and he wanted the special prosecutor to ensure the integrity of this investigation.
One of the great frustrations we've had for months now is you talk about protecting the United States of America. My heavens, the way you do that is you be honest with American citizens, and the Justice Department and FBI have obstructed at every turn, as we've requested. How many times have we had to threaten subpoena or subpoena?
Has Donald Trump been honest with the American people
I think
since he's been the president?
He's been more transparent on what's been going on in this investigation.
He has made more misleading statements and lies documented than any other president during the same period of time.
No collusion. Guys, we're out of time. We could do for a whole hour. And I love Scott Bolden.
And another thing.
Congressman. And there's so much more in the memos to get to. We're going to bring in Victor Davis Hanson, Ari Fleischer when we come back. And